Well, good day, everyone. We are thrilled to have you here today. We're going to be talking about going from monologue to dialogue, and what a timely topic it is given the world around us these days. I don't think it's just unique to the United States. We are living in a world that is increasingly polarized. And if we can't talk to one another, if we can't come to some kind of common ground, where does that leave us? So I called in an expert, and I'm going to introduce you to her in just 1 minute. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Laurie Battaglia. I'm the CEO of Aligned at Work in Scottsdale, Arizona. Aligned at Work are the experts that forward-thinking organizations call when they want help creating a workplace where the humans actually want to show up to work. We do that in a number of ways, but I really want to get to our special guest today. She's someone that I've known for a while. Her name is Bhakti Karkare, and she is a highly sought after speaker, facilitator, and executive coach. She's a facilitator at heart, and she believes that dialogue has the power to take any team or organization from exclusion to inclusion and ultimately to innovation. The most fulfilling part of her work is transforming teams that are struggling with power dynamics, miscommunication, and low levels of engagement into high-performing powerhouses. According to her clients, Bhakti is their first call when they know when they need to have that difficult dialogue that they don't want to have. She's helped hundreds of leaders become facilitators themselves, such important skills, and they discover and develop their own authentic leadership styles. Her company, Third Loop Learning, is an unexpected outcome of her not taking no for an answer as an immigrant, a woman of color, and an annoyingly passionate facilitator of dialogue. She will always say yes to a cup of chai and a warm conversation. And yes, she can do all the listening. Please help me welcome Bhakti to our LinkedIn Live today. Bhakti, why don't you start out telling us just a little bit about Third Loop Learning? There you are.
Hi there. Yeah. You said it all. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me to your LinkedIn Live. This is amazing. I want to say that Third Loop Learning is really mission driven, and it came out of my experience looking at how dialogue can change teams and their performance and relationships. And when I was thinking about starting a company after moving to the US, this was the only way to go for me. The only thing I want to teach leaders is how to become facilitators themselves. And Third Loop Learning is rooted in that mission. And I'm very glad that I get to spread that message today through your live.
And we met through an organization called Heroic, which in the day we went there was Heroic Public Speaking, where we went to sort of up-level our craft of speaking on stage. And then we got to do a photo shoot together with our friend Raj. Yes. And that was where we really got to talk a little bit. So I'm thrilled to have you in my network and be able to call you, and thank you for supporting me the one time that I went to a speaking event. It's been an amazing conversation and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So let's get started. And I'm going to invite people who are on LinkedIn or YouTube, where we're simulcasting, to put comments out there, because we can see those and we'll be responding to them verbally. And my crack assistant, who's in the background, will even be responding to them in writing if need be. So please do that. And I'm going to pull those up right now just to make sure that I can see them when the time comes, that people are even saying hi out there. Let us know you're there. So we're going to start out with the inevitable question, which is, why can't we go back to the good old days where we just didn't talk about things that polarized us, where we weren't allowed to bring up politics or religion or mental health or any of those old things that we weren't allowed to talk about? So why can't we go back to those times, Bhakti?
First of all, there are many organizations who are back there still. It's not a reality where in every organization, in all industries, people are able to address issues that they're passionate about, that they want to be advocating about, or that they are bothered by. So we still have a long way to go where organizations are really ready to address issues head on and let employees talk about the things that they care about. But we have come to a stage where it's becoming more and more unavoidable. It's no more the time where we can now say this topic is off the charts here. You cannot talk about this, or you cannot discuss this way, or you cannot bring up this topic. And I think there are two reasons primarily that I see. There are many reasons, of course, but primarily I see two shifts that have happened in the last 20 years, I guess. One is very, very pervasive, all pervasive. It's for everyone, regardless of what generation you come from, what background you come from. The way, and that's the way we interact with our world itself. The way we interact with news media, with events, has significantly shifted. I mean, it is no more that you go home, watch TV, watch the news cycle, and be done with it, and you next day you go to work and you're disconnected. From there, we've gone to 24-hour news cycle, and now we are at a place where the news is in our hands all the time, and not just the news, the opinions about it, the polarizing, the divisive opinions about it are getting bombarded at us in dopamine hitting news reels and Instagram reels, or wherever people prefer to watch and learn. So we are constantly triggered by information around us. And we are humans, we need outlets. And a lot of our time is spent at work. It's impossible to completely disconnect with what's happening outside of work. It's just impossible. It's affecting us. And that's why we are talking about it with our colleagues, with our managers. It's on our mind. So we are surrounded by it. And I think that has completely changed the way we show up at work. It has changed our social identity, and everything that's happening in the news kind of feels personal, and we opinionate about it, and that forms a part of our identity at work as well. So that's the first reason I feel that it's so ingrained in the way we show up at work that it's difficult to disconnect, like we used to, like my dad used to maybe.
Yes.
Going to his job, and whatever happened on news is at home, and he's coming to work and he's doing his work, and that's it. The second is more intergenerational, and I know we're going to talk about that a lot. But if we talk specifically of Gen Z, which is becoming a majority of our workforce, the way they grew up has a completely different take on their values and how they think about work. This is a generation that has seen internet-enabled communication all their life. That's how they grew up. And because of that, it has shaped their values of getting fast communication, authentic communication that is scalable. I think this is at the core of why Gen Z is different in the way they show up at work, because of how they have been able to interact with world, with different cultures, with different geographies, with news from around the world, and they got it fast, unlike us. So the speed at which they are used to communicating has shaped their communication values. And that shows up in the way they show up at work. So if you look at some of the biggest studies done on Gen Z, one of them was done by Center of Advanced Study in Behavior Sciences. It's a fascinating study. And some of the core values identified for Gen Z, people who were born between mid-1990s to 2010. Some of the core values identified in that study, one is they're very self-driven. And they are not just self-driven, they're self-driven people who care about others and care about issues. That is a very core identifier for Gen Z. This creates another set of values like valuing diversity, valuing authentic communication, community, and collaboration. So if you look at all these values coming together in the shape of what a Gen Z employee shows up at work as, it significantly has transformed the employee-employer communication contract.
Yeah. Yes.
What I expect from my employer in terms of communication is very different than what a Gen Z employee that's coming in would expect. And because this communication contract has changed, there's no way that employees can completely ignore the need for Gen Z to know what my employer is thinking about an issue, or what my employer is doing in terms of policy change, or how do they view this particular event that has happened in the world. How is it impacting the way we treat our customers? How is it impacting the way our products and services are being delivered? Are we rethinking our strategy because of that? And that's a big expectation, but that's just the way Gen Z expects employers to behave, or at least respond or react to world events. And for these two things, the way they interact, or all of us interact with news and events, and this new set of values, which is, by the way, impacting all of us. I mean, they are bringing in these values, but it's impacting how I expect employers to be, right? Or even boomers are expecting employers to be, because it is these are positive values. None of these are negative values. They are bringing a positive change in the workplace. And I think all these coming together will lead to a place where silence will no longer be celebrated. It's not something that people would encourage their employers to be, and they want to know why you're making certain decisions. Where is that coming from, and what values are we advocating for?
Yeah. And I think that the pandemic kind of took things and blew them up. It seems like anything that was trending before that just kind of went. So I'm also old enough to remember when we weren't allowed to have social media accounts, or we had to really watch what we put in there. And then, things got taken to court and things like that. And it's just a very different workplace. And I think it's caught a lot of people off guard who have been in the workplace for a while and thinking like, well, they should just adapt to this, not realizing the world has changed and it's not going to happen.
I mean, I remember this was back in 2015 when this particular platform started. I'm forgetting the name of it, but where you can go and review your employer. And
that was Glassdoor.
Glassdoor, right? And I remember that was when I was in my job search, and it was shocking to, that I'm interviewing for someone and I can go and look at what employees are talking about. And it really did guide my interview process, and where do I apply and where should I stay away from. So transparency is going to become more and more mainstay, with technology becoming so all pervasive, and because of that transparency comes the need for open communication, and that's why we're talking about dialogue today.
And I think that a lot of folks need the education on so how do you get there from here? Even topics like mental health, let alone what's going on in the world today. People just don't know how to address certain things. So can you explain the difference between monologue, debate, discussion, dialogue, all of those kinds of things? I think you've got a continuum you can share with us.
I know. Yeah, I'm just gonna get there. So as I was developing my work on dialogue, it was really becoming important for me to tell people what dialogue is through what it is not. And what it's not is definitely a monologue. And I love saying this quote, that two monologues don't make a dialogue. And and a lot of us are walking around in this world not ever getting a chance to have a deep dialogue with our teams, with the people that matter, or when we are at the other end of spectrum with everyone, we end up we end up either just monologuing or at best debating. And so I thought, let me develop this continuum to help people understand what it takes to reach to dialogue and what is the value out of dialogue. And to understand that, we have to understand what is the value of each of these forms of communication. And by the way, each one of these have their own space and place in our communication. So the first one is, of course, monologue. And it's really, really as simple as that. You are talking at someone. It's great at sometimes when leaders have to guide people to get somewhere, which is a pre-decided notion. It's great to express, but it just gets that expression. It doesn't get commitment from others. So monologue is you're talking at someone, and its only purpose is to express your thoughts and feelings. And the second is debate. We all know what debate is, and ultimately debate is a form of communication where all that matters is winning. Right? It's a very great form of communication when you really want ideas to come forward, and you want very different sorts of ideas to come at play. And it's great for audiences who are listening to it, but it doesn't do anything for those who are involved in debate. It doesn't do anything for you to come closer to the other perspective. So we see this happening a lot right now, the right and the left, and the anti versus the pro. It's all debate. There's no no endeavor or no desire to find connection with the other side. Again, useful sometimes, but it doesn't get us what we're looking for in terms of getting closer to understanding each other. And the third one is discussion. And I really, if I have to pick up the one that I kind of dislike, is this one, because it's such a middle ground. It's only sharing of ideas. It's great when all you want to do is share, but again, it has no direction. And unfortunately, a lot of our meetings, day-to-day meetings, are discussions. If you have that feeling that you're conducting meeting and you walk out thinking, what did we even do in the last 1 hour or 2 hours, and where are we headed, I don't know what's next, that's because you just had a discussion. So it's better than debate. It definitely creates space for all kinds of voices to be heard, but it really doesn't ensure a productive outcome. And then the fourth one, I had to invent this, because in my work, the most I see is most well-intended teams, mature teams, very mature leaders want to have dialogue, and they want to go beyond this endless discussion and debates. And so they walk into the conversation with the intention of listening and showing curiosity and asking difficult questions, etc. But I call it almost dialogue because it's still not dialogue, and we'll talk about the gap there. But it's the goal in almost dialogue is connection, which is great. It's better than discussion because there is still an intention to connect everyone and to get to the common ground. So I call it almost dialogue because it's still not dialogue. And if we really want to collaborate, which is one of the biggest outcomes we're looking for in all our conversations, is how do we get together and get to a better place together from where we are now. Especially important when people have diverse opinions. If we really want to collaborate, we have to get in dialogue. And what we really need to get in dialogue is someone to take the role of a facilitator. Dialogue doesn't happen by default. Someone has to take this elevated responsibility of seeing beyond the obvious, seeing beyond words, seeing beyond what's working for this group, asking questions like what's not working and how can we center this conversation rather than having sides. So if we really want to get in dialogue, we need more people who can be facilitators versus just participants. So if you really want to have as polarizing a topic but still connect, someone has to leave that position and get on a higher ground, and that's what dialogue does. So this is to see what's the outcome of each of these processes. And if we want more collaboration in our organizations, we have to move out of monologues, debates, and discussions and really get into dialogue. And that's what I help leaders get to.
Nice. So may I take that screen down? Can I take the visual down? Okay, let me remove that. Okay, there we go. So we have a question in the questions I'm noticing. So Travis is asking, how do you differentiate between values and expectations? Do you think there's a disconnect between what one values versus what employers can deliver, and the same in regard to expectations?
Yeah, it's really common to exchange one for another, and the outward manifestation of values is expectation. But values are deep-seated inside. So a lot, I agree, and this is a very valid question. A lot of what Gen Z sometimes expects can be taken as people who are very, let me think of the word, entitled.
Yes, you hear that a lot.
You think you need this from your employer. We didn't have this back then. So it may come across as expectation that is wrongly placed. But if we go deeper into why is this expectation there, then we get into the values conversation. And that's why I started this conversation, is why do they want this is because of how they grew up. And it's because of what they saw. And what the difference they saw between how their parents interacted with their employers and what it got them versus what they're seeing out there in the world. And they can see it on the internet. They can talk to other people. They have information that our parents never had. Even I did not have that information. And now, because there is access to information, there is access to diverse communities, there is access to knowing what's going on in the world because of what employers are doing. This information has created a generation that is questioning more,
Yes.
that is asking more questions. So the value is actually coming from experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just coming out because, hey, everyone is valuing this, so let me value this. It's coming from personal experience. Like you mentioned, COVID, it
Yep.
changed the way people think about mental health and work
Yeah.
hours. And it's the same conversation when someone is saying, I don't want to go back to office. It's not just because I'm lazy, or why should I'm entitled
Right.
to remote work. It's because I've seen how it works and what it does to my mental health, my productivity. I'm giving more to my organization. I don't want to travel for 2 hours. So I
Right.
think values are driven through personal experiences, and they are so deep rooted that they guide our right and wrong. And so when internally something starts seeming wrong, that's when we question it. And that's what is happening with Gen Z. So, and versus expectations, Travis, is, oh, I wish I had that, or this is what I want from you. And it's coming from nowhere. It's just because a friend of mine gets this. So why don't my employer give this
True.
to me? It's not that superficial. So I think expectations are more superficial. They are more driven from outside, versus values are really internally driven. And that's what we are seeing in more and more Gen Z employees and
Mm-hmm.
the next ones. And we're going to
Yeah.
see more of that because they are really influencing how we think about work.
Definitely.
I hope that
Definitely.
answers your question, Travis. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. So our next thing that we were going to talk about was some of the examples of what you've seen in workplaces, and tell us a few stories, if you can, about things that you've seen, people
Yeah.
you've worked with.
Yeah. So the most common thing I see, and it's just written in my bio, is avoiding difficult conversations. And what I like to say is, ignoring tough conversation doesn't make them disappear. It just furthers the divide.
Amen to that.
Yeah. And
Yes.
I see that again and again, that there is this elephant in the room that no
Yeah.
one feels like they should address, and they feel like they're getting around it, and it seems okay because you're getting
Mhm.
around it,
Mhm.
but it just furthers the problem that you have, and the elephant comes and tramples all over it in some days. So what I see the most is, there is, let's say, a cultural phenomenon that's happening, or there is a shift, a change that is triggering emotional responses in a team, and no one wants to address it. Specifically, the leaders doesn't want to get in front of it. And when I go in and facilitate a dialogue, it not just doesn't it of course provides an outlet and a way to connect and share ideas, but it does more than that. What it does, it helps create a bridge in the team that helps them go through change together, because most of these issues are around change. Something changes and it triggers something, whether it's a new leader coming in, or the highest performer leaving, or a new product, or a new strategy. Something has happened that has triggered an emotional response in the team,
Yes.
or a conflict, or promotions, or
Right.
layoffs. I mean, think about all the changes that a team goes through all the time. Sometimes teams just go through them without realizing, because there is inbuilt trust in the team, and probably because they have had some tough conversations. But when teams have avoided that, and I see there's so much in mature teams, they've never had a dialogue, never
Right.
have they sat down and said, what's our problem, what are our strengths
Right.
together, what are we ignoring as a team, or what is that thing that we don't talk about but it bothers everyone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And teams go through years never having had that conversation, even a pleasant conversation about, hey, what I
Right.
value about you.
Right.
There's never, I have had people cry in these team dialogue, and
Yeah.
it's so odd to see. It's very unsettling for some people that, and it comes from the most unexpected person, the person who's sitting there being, this is a waste
Right.
of time and you're wasting my time. And when the dialogue happens, and the only thing I've asked them to do is just say one nice thing about each other, what you value
Yeah.
about this person. and
Yes.
and that very person has tears in his eyes because he's saying, I've never known that my team values me this way. No one has ever told me that this is what I bring to the table.
Yes.
So it's these conversations that create the bridge for change. And if you have more of these dialogues, the more change becomes easier on a team.
You're bringing up the emotion end of it. And while you're doing that, I'm thinking to myself, wow, I remember going to, because I like to go back to why are things the way they are? And then how do we shift them to change them, to get them to where things are today and into the future? And to shine a light on what the boomers and probably Gen X went through, we had classes on how to take the emotion out of work, how to make it purely fact-based, like, no, there's no place for your emotions here.
Yes.
Like, leave those at home, hang it at the door, walk in. Now we're just going to stick to facts and data. And I worked in the financial field for my 37 years in so very much about facts and data. And yet people are feeling the feelings.
Yeah.
And now with my company, it's when I hire facilitators for, to do the work when we land clients, you've got to be comfortable going into the emotions. I say that as somebody who's still very uncomfortable with, I like to process other people's emotions. I don't like to process my own. And I think that's the conditioning.
Yeah.
And so when you bring that, and then you bring Gen Z, who's there. And by the way, the boomers got called entitled too, FYI. Yeah. But we bring these entitled Gen Z in the room, and they want to process their emotions and talk about their mental health and all that. And the boomers like, because we were schooled out of it.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that was right. I'm just saying, like, let's shine a light on why that was the way it was. So we're undoing the years of damage. I think that we did to each other.
And it's, for doing the work that I do, sometimes it seems like it's obvious. And what you're pointing out is actually reality for many people still. Like, there's no place for emotion. Don't talk about mental health to me. Don't talk about your kids to me. Don't talk about, why are you talking about this? Or I don't care what you're going through. Just get the work done.
Right.
Last month, I had a coaching call where my client told me this is what his manager told him. And it's a tech organization where you expect managers to understand the value of having these conversations. And, they are trained on coaching skills and all of this. And it's still a reality for many managers. And I think part of it is, of course, not taking personal responsibility as a leader or not up-leveling your skills and, leave the dark times behind. But part of it is this conditioning. This is how it went for me. Why should it be different for you? Or I roughed it out. You got to rough it out too. And we're seeing, of course, a lot of positive change, but it's still a long way to go. And I think it starts with communication.
It does.
It starts with communication. And unfortunately, a lot of leaders are not skilled in this. Part of why I'm so passionate about this is I see the transformation that I bring to a group as a facilitator. And I honestly feel it's not rocket science what I do. But why are we not teaching these skills to leaders who are out there responsible for growing people? And let's be honest, it's just not about the workplace. How my manager treats me at work goes back to my home and how I show up at home. And we really need these basic dialogue skills for our leaders to be the baseline for being a leader.
I 100% agree with you. I think it's time to teach people how to do this because we don't have the skills inherently. And then if we go back to, so who taught us? Well, nobody taught us. So we've got to get it to the point where we're teaching people how to get into dialogue. And maybe it's a step down that continuum, a little bit at a time. It could be a transformation. It could be an evolution. It could be a revolution. Who knows? But how do you advise people when they're like, help us? We've got these talks that we need to have. People think if we just stuff it, it will go away, and it's not there, but it's not going away. How do we do this? Well, like, what's your first step when you work with organizations?
So there are two ways that organizations work with me in these contexts. One is they bring me to facilitate these conversations, and that's their shortcut, to be honest. Is, we can't have these conversations. You come in and you do this conversation for us. And it's a bandit solution. It's a start. It's still a step up from we don't want to have this conversation. I don't care what my employees want. So it's still it gets me money. I love doing those conversations. I'm very happy about that business. But the second and more aspirational and more exciting and challenging for me is when organizations say, you have the first conversation, but then you teach us how do we sustain it. Sometimes it comes in that wording. Sometimes it comes as a challenge. Okay, you will have the conversation. What after that? What if they come ask me this?
Right.
And it has happened. I go facilitate a conversation, and people make commitments, and they are very excited about future and how they're going to talk about this stuff. And then I go out, and they go back to the same old behaviors.
Yeah.
Keeping difficult conversations under the rug, avoiding, or delaying, or not talking about something. So where I think the maximum value is that, okay, let me have the first conversation. You watch it, but then you learn the skills because they are teachable, they're transferable. You can learn these skills, you can start somewhere. So then we go into, okay, who is the most influential, which group of people interact the most with your frontline employees? Generally, it comes out to be leaders, HR, DEI professionals.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who are, who are encountering these conversations the most.
Right. Right.
Examples of such conversations for DEI folks, people who are on ERGs, is we want to start a committee on XYZ group, about a religious group or someone who believes in X versus Y. And why can't we have that? And that's not a part of the organization's value. But for that person who's got that question, now it's, what do I say? And generally it goes in debates, or it goes in total silence, or it goes in monologues, or endless discussion, but it doesn't build connection and understanding as to why we want this ERG, what's underneath this ask, right?
Right.
For HR people, it's a wide variety of things, and that's why I have a masterclass, especially for HR people. Is, oh, my manager is doing this, help me, or I don't feel heard or seen in my team. Women coming saying, I don't get invited to important meetings, or my manager really insults me in front of clients. I mean, all sorts of issues. And that's such a valuable opportunity for HR professionals to coach this person, but also get to the leader and change the overall organizational culture and make an impact. But it can't be done through teaching or debating or monologues. It has to be done through dialogue, because these are very sensitive topics. So that's another way that organizations engage with me, is bringing me in to teach these skills to a specific set of people, people who are out there and can make the biggest change in the organization just by how they communicate and how they engage in dialogue. So my advice to people who come across these difficult conversations is number one, in that moment, make a choice.
Yeah.
Make a choice. Do you want it to be a dialogue or anything else? Because that's the first point of decision. Because if you want it to be a dialogue, then you have already elevated your responsibility. You no longer are going to just be the speaker or a passive listener. You want to engage in dialogue. And if the answer is yes, I want it to be a dialogue because I want to understand what's going on. I want to build more connection. I want to build collaboration. I want to get results out of it, maybe innovative ideas out of it. Why do you want dialogue? These are the reasons that you want dialogue. Then you decide, okay, am I ready to be a facilitator here? That's the second question you ask yourself. Yes, I'm ready to be a facilitator, which means you're no more a participant. You don't take that passive role of just a participant. So you've elevated yourself. You are a facilitator. And that then comes the idea of stepping into the facilitator's mindset.
Okay.
This mindset is very special. It's unlike any other communication role that you may take, which is, even a speaker or a leader.
Right.
A facilitator is very different in their mindset. Their idea is to have a dialogue. And what is a dialogue? The easiest definition is a dialogue is a conversation with a center and no sides. So you want to bring centering conversations. You want to bring centering ideas into this very polar, divided conversation. And if you want to do that, you have to be willing to make some sacrifices. And I talk about the sacrifices facilitators make. It doesn't seem like a sacrifice now once you start practicing it. But initially it seems like, oh, so I don't get to speak? No, you don't. You are here to listen. Oh, so I don't get to give advice? No, you don't. You are going to ask for opinions, and you're going to ask for advice from others. Oh,
Right.
so I don't get to answer the questions. No, you get to ask amazing questions, right?
Yes.
So I have to shut up. Yes, you do. You have to really just shut up and listen. So those are some of the mindset shifts that you have to make in order to continue the dialogue. And the one tip I can give, the secret to that mindset is to remember, don't try to win it, just be in it.
I love it.
Don't
I
try to
love
win
it.
it, just be in it. And when you start with, how can I just stay in the conversation? Then you'll take all the right actions. Of course, there are skills associated with it. So then the
Mhm.
second is, okay, now I'm a facilitator. I have that mindset. What are the skills I'm going to use? And essentially, there are three basic skills. One is listening.
Mhm.
Second is questioning, and third is reflecting.
Nice.
Right? Listen a lot.
Yes.
When you
Yes.
ask a question, you will listen. So ask more questions. And what you hear reflected back. You don't have to do anything. You
Mhm.
don't have to opinionate. You don't have to give your advice. You don't need to even know what's being talked about. As long as you can reflect, you are going to create a dialogue and you're going to stay in dialogue. So that's your skill set. And the third is what's happening in between this mindset and skill set is the space that you're creating. And I love
Mhm.
this quote. I forget who wrote it, but it's not just about what you bring to the conversation, but how you leave it. And if you focus on how am I leaving the conversation, then you start focusing on psychological safety. So that's the third element, and my entire masterclass is based on that. But
Yeah.
there's a lot to it. But it's that first question: do I want to have a dialogue or not? And it's okay to say I don't have the bandwidth. I'm not in the right mindset. This is not the
Right.
topic. I am getting triggered. Knowing all of
Right.
that, and say
Get out
I'm
of it.
still in a debate. I
Yep.
am going to have it, and that's okay if you have made a very conscious choice. So
Yep.
do I want to have a dialogue? The second is, if yes, am I ready to be a facilitator?
Mhm.
Because if you
Mhm.
don't, no one else will, unless they are here in this talk. So
Right.
then you have two facilitators. That's what we want. We want everyone to be a facilitator.
Yes.
But more often than not, people are not thinking about being facilitators. But when you take that role, you just don't serve yourself, you serve everyone. And then you just don't get cooperation and coordination, you get collaboration. That's what we want. And that's why it's such a critical skill set for leaders, because leaders want collaboration. They don't just want
Right.
commitment and compliance, they want collaboration. And if you
Right.
want collaboration, then you got to have dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then once you have decided to be a facilitator, let's get the mindset and the skills you need and focus on psychological safety.
I like the way you delineated the pieces of being a facilitator. It was a skill I had to learn, and I still have to remind myself because I want to talk. I process out loud, so I want to talk, and I have to listen more. What's also coming up for me as you're talking is that the change actually happens once the people working together, and let's say in a workplace, the people working together, if they hold one another accountable, if they acknowledge, hey, that was great dialogue that you just led there. I could see you trying out some of the skills we learned. That works.
Yeah.
It's like the guy that you said had never realized that what people cared about with him. He'd never been acknowledged.
Yeah.
We don't know unless somebody tells us.
Yeah.
And we
And
make crazy stories up in our heads.
all right. And that's one of the biggest outcomes when teams engage with me in a dialogue is, what are the rules of engagement in future? And I don't have a number, but I don't think a lot of teams have any rules of engagement on how we hold each other accountable. How do
Yeah.
we say the tough thing to each other? How do we give feedback to each other? And we're talking
Yes.
about building unity amidst change, and change is here. Like AI is here. We're bombarded by change everywhere. So the
Yes.
rules of the game are changing, but we are not changing the rules of how we tell each other what we're feeling and how we are thinking about each other. So if we don't explicitly make those rules, one, we avoid doing that tough thing, or we do it in whatever way it pleases us, breaking bridges, breaking relationships, creating enemies. So if nothing, my hope is that all the leaders who are here listening now, later, have you have you spent some time in creating some kinds of rules of engagement for your team? How do we give each other feedback? How do we show each other respect, value? How do we tell each other that, hey, you promised this to me? What is, how do we hold each other accountable,
Yeah.
including their leaders. And once we have that, it becomes so easy to
Yep.
start speaking the same language. Language is a big part of how we do work, and I don't think we give enough attention to language.
Agreed.
And we create some structures around those, in terms of, if I see you doing this, can I call you out this way?
Right.
And so
And have agreements.
yeah.
Yes.
So we lose the burden of making the other feel bad. That's such a big burden. That's why we have problems with feedback, because we don't want to be the person delivering bad news to others. So when we have that kind of rules of engagement, and that can only happen through dialogue. It cannot be the leader coming and saying, hey, these are the rules of engagement. Then it's not collaboration. I mean, we have that and it's not working. We have values on our walls plastered all over, and we have mission and vision. It's not working because it's not coming from through collaboration. It's coming through monologue. So if you have values, have a dialogue on that, and what does it mean in terms of actionable behaviors.
Yes.
And we need more of that. Otherwise, dealing with this change is only going to be more taxing on
Yes.
everyone. And then we are going to ignore things like mental health, stress at work, engagement, commitment. And I feel dialogue is such a beautiful way to address all of these peripheral issues, but the core of it is communication, and having dialogue can help us address all of that.
Yeah. Travis is putting some great comments out there on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they going to stay here? Can we read the comments later as well?
They will stay here. It's kind of funny. LinkedIn sometimes hides the comments, but they come up as the thing. But other times I see them out there. I can't quite figure out what they do with that. But he's basically saying that we've got to relearn how we teach people to communicate as community. And he hopes it grows as a movement. And at his last org, one of my favorite tools was a communications best practices guide for feedback and organizational wide communications at large, utterly valuable.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. I think leaders can set the tone with they've got to practice it themselves, fumble, show the vulnerability of like, I messed that up. That was not what I wanted to say or do. That was my old conditioning. Let me restart and, set the tone for it, really.
Yeah. And I think there's some debate around, is it a collective responsibility or leadership responsibility? I'm a big advocate of leaders go first. And when leaders go first, whether they are going to goof up or make good decisions and show up as star, when leaders go first, people copy them. People see the impact of them. And so one of the questions I get asked is, okay, so how do I have more dialogue in my organization? And I say it starts with the leader. Get the leader to facilitate. Get the leader to show some of the behaviors, even not all. Just listening or asking curious questions or showing their vulnerability. All of that. If leaders go first, people see the impact. People start copying, and that's the time when you see that happening. Is a great time for developing organizational capability, and that's when you invest in both leaders and employees at some levels to start making that change in the way people communicate. And when people change the way they talk, they change systems, because now we're talking about things that are bothering us. So it starts showing systemic change, and when systemic change happens, that's when culture change happens.
Right.
So to get to that cultural change, we have to change the systems, and to get to systems, we have to start with people talking about systems differently, and to get there, leaders have to take the first step.
Yeah.
So my mantra is leaders go first. I mean, it has to be them because of this gift they have. The gift of power. I mean, you have authority of power. You can do anything you want in terms of behavior for some time without anyone questioning you. But if you expect people to do it, they are thinking of hundreds of things. What is the repercussion? How's my leader seeing me? How my colleagues seeing me? It's just a lot to ask of people to change their behaviors if leaders don't go first.
Right. Yeah. I would even add that into, like, a lot of times we'll do training classes to establish the common language, the common practices, things like that. And in my corporate days, I would see leaders that were just like, take that 2-day class. If it was a 2-day class, take that 2-day class and skinny that down to about a half hour. Can you do an overview for us?
Yeah.
Sure. But nothing will come of it. You'll know what the word is, but you won't have felt the feeling of trying that out, messing it up, and then trying it again. Yeah. It just makes such a phenomenal difference when even the most senior people go through what everybody else goes through and set that tone up front. It's a shift that you can't make happen any other way other than like you do it too.
Yeah, what you're highlighting is the power of process.
Yes.
I mean, you have to go through the process and trust the process to see the change.
Yes.
The outcomes you want. And it happens so much in my strategic dialogue sessions. I spend, let's say it's a 2 days retreat or something of that sort. And the first day is generally just spent on knowing each other and complimenting each other and thanking each other and giving each other feedback. And they get so impatient. Like, what are you doing, Bhakti? Like, we haven't
even going to get to it.
Let's get to the point. I want to talk about your thing. Okay, you do.
Yeah.
We'll do that tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, they are so prepped and ready to listen and to see each other beyond the facade and to listen to other, empathize with other, because of all the things that we have done on day one, that they have a different lens for each other. And that's the process. That's how dialogue happens. I always like to say, don't think of dialogue as an event. It's not going to be, one conversation. This is going to be dialogue and we'll find the solution. No, it's a process. You will have multiple conversation, and each conversation is a dialogue to move things forward.
Yes.
And that's the unique proposition of dialogue, that dialogue always makes us move forward. So if you want to know if I had a dialogue, was that successful? You may say, oh, I didn't get these problems solved. It's still a success. Did you lean a little closer towards knowing each other better, to see the problem in the common light? Yes. Then it's a dialogue and it's successful. Keep going. It's not going to happen. You can't change people's mindset and the way they see you in one conversation.
Right.
Dialogue provides the avenue to get there a little slower, but even in a better way, and get to a new place which none of you imagined.
Yeah. Right? And you just hit there on the go slower, because a lot of times I'll say, like, you got to slow down to go fast.
Yes.
You got to get in the room, do the things like that first day that you're talking about to accelerate the speed going forward. Otherwise, you think you're going fast, but there's this quiet undertone over here that's not being said or being stuffed.
Yeah.
That's like an emergency brake that's on that you didn't know in your car.
And that's what will make you end up in the same place next year or next quarter. So you
doing
just
it all over again,
and you're going to do it over and over again, saying the same things. So dialogue is the smarter way.
So we're coming down the home stretch. I'm going to ask you about your dialogue assessment tool, but is there anything else for strategies or tactics that we missed? I think you've covered a lot of good stuff.
I want to give people some signs to look out for where they can make a decision that, hey, my team is really in a dialogue deficit. Like we are not talking about things we should, because sometimes it's not going to come across very obviously that there is a problem, but there are undertones and behaviors in teams and in organizations that leaders can look out for. So one is, if you're seeing a lot of monopolization of voice, some people are talking a lot in your meetings or whenever there's an opportunity to express, and some are just not. That is called monopolization. And if that is happening in your team, you got to stop and say, what's happening? Why are some voices not being heard? Why are some people not speaking up? And to assume they don't have anything to say is just bad. Like everyone has something to say, but if they are not saying it, there's something wrong with the way you are making them communicate. And now it's time to facilitate. So that's the first one. The second is, if you see a lot of us versus them conversation, whether it's the them is outside team, the other team, or the other people, or the organization versus me, or the customer versus me, it's essentially an emotional state of blaming everything outside of me. Like, I'm not the problem, someone else is the problem. And really facilitating a dialogue to help see how people are themselves responsible for where they are is eye-opening for people. How am I contributing to the problem is a question no one gets asked. How are you contributing? I understand you have a lot of problems. How you contribute? So that's second, the us versus them. If you see a lot of avoidance of issues, whether it's personal avoidance or group avoidance, we just don't want to address this process. We don't want to address this customer issue, or we don't want to address this loophole that we have, whatever that is. You've seen that it's time for dialogue. The fourth one is groupthink. if you're seeing everyone just agreeing to whatever you say, everyone is agreeing to the popular opinion, or everyone is being too nice, which is called artificial harmony, by the way, then it's just not natural. If you have diverse opinions, you're going to have conflicts. And if you're
Yes.
not seeing conflicts or difference of opinion, you've gone into a rut of just endless discussions. People are just sharing, everyone is agreeing, and the real conversations are not happening. So that's another one to look out for. And if you have endless circular conversation, if you feel every meeting you're having the same conversations and nothing is progressing, it's your fault. I mean, sorry to break the news. It's your fault as a leader that you're not facilitating correctly, and you're just wasting your time, everyone's time. And it's time to look into some dialogue tools and learn how to facilitate dialogue to get people out of that rut. So yeah,
Nice.
5 signs to look out for.
Nice. And so you have an assessment on dialogue, if I remember correctly. Okay.
And a lot of the questions in the assessment kind of helps people understand what are the team behaviors happening. And the assessment is in 3 categories. So it's for HR and DEI professionals who have very different goals. So you can select who you are, whether you're an HR DEI professional, whether you are a leader leading a complex team, or you are a solopreneur and you're looking to grow your business. So, and then once you select that, it gives you different questions. And the questions essentially plot your team behaviors or your communication behaviors from monologue to dialogue, where you are in this continuum. What is your tendency? And we all have tendencies. I mean, some of us are very prone to debate. We love debate. So it can show you if your tendency is debate and how is it impacting your team. Or is your tendency to go into monologues, or you just like to share, so you're just having endless conversations. So it plots you on these 5 areas of the continuum, and then gives you actionable strategies on what to do next and how I can help you. So yeah, there's the link. It's a free assessment, takes 10 minutes, and you get a lot of follow-up email with tools, tips, and strategies as well.
Awesome. Okay. And how would people, let me think if there's anything else hold on, I'm going to check my list. I'll make sure we covered everything. How do people stay in touch with you? I'm
most available on LinkedIn, so people can connect with me on LinkedIn, or they can sign up for my newsletter on my website. So if they go, there's a pop-up, you can sign up. This is my website, www.thirdlooplearning.com. So DM me, email me, or follow me on my website, and you'll get facilitation tips and dialogue tips through my newsletters.
Fantastic. Yeah. And then you have a masterclass coming up. Tell us about that a little bit.
Oh, I just finished the last cohort in December. So the next one probably will not be up until April. But if you're interested in joining my masterclass, then please go and sign up for the waitlist. Look out for the communication around that, or DM me, and I'll put you in the waitlist.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And if anybody has any more questions, put those in the LinkedIn comments now, because we are coming down the home stretch. Travis, thank you for all your questions and comments, because they were really helpful.
Travis. Yeah.
And so many people are going to watch this later. Oftentimes people watch it later. So they'll be able to reach out to you and grab your LinkedIn profile link and all those kinds of things. Reach out through your website. Send you messages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This was fun.
Yes. Any last words for everybody? Are you good to go?
I am good to go. Please stay in touch. Some of the ways you can engage with me is invite me in your organization to speak, whether it's for a keynote or for a lunch and learn or for training and development initiatives, or you can join or send people to the masterclass. I'm happy to help. I hope we create more dialogue in our workplaces, and I hope we have more facilitators out there in the world.
We sure need it. You can't have too much of it. You can't do too many things, and let's get there.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Bhakti, for taking this time. I know you've got a busy schedule, and I have loved getting deeper into dialogue with you and to what it takes to really get there.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew as much about, I know I did not know as much about that continuum as I needed to know about it. So I've really learned a lot myself. I think everybody else has too. And we hope to see you out there on LinkedIn, and I hope to see you on stages and to continue to see each other socially too with our speaker friends.
This was
So
amazing. I had so much fun having this conversation, and thank you for inviting me.
absolutely. Okay. Thank you to everyone out there. And with that, we're going to log off to the day. Have a good one.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye.